Hi, I'm Max Delos, host of the 2025 Atkins Realis UDG Conference podcast. Episodes focus on the topics covered at this year's conference. To introduce myself a little bit, I'm an assistant modeller at Atkins Realis in the Peterborough office. I have a passion for communicating the health benefits of getting close to nature. I have a collaborative work approach and enjoy bringing people together to share their experiences. I do this through my own podcast called the Maximise Nature Podcast. This looks into the benefits of going outdoors. Our guest for this episode is Zoe Schneider. Today's been an insight into spill verification at CSO chambers using angle sensors, which I hope you find interesting. Zoe, could you let the listeners know a little bit about your background and something you like to do when you have time off work?
So I'm Zoe and I'm also an assistant modeller at Atkins Realis. I work in the Bristol office. I did geography and French at uni. I've always been interested in water. I work in the hydraulics team, and outside of work I really like hiking, dancing, water sports and just general travelling and holidays.
Don't we all love a holiday? Where's the best place you've been to?
Probably the best place is Nicaragua in Central America. Some good volcanoes there.
I did my dissertation on that and I've never been. Always want to go. Yeah.
I'd recommend it.
What does storm overflow monitoring at combined sewer overflows entail, and what are some of the challenges it can create?
So essentially, storm overflow monitoring is tracking when and how often wastewater is discharged into the environment. So a CSO is as you say, a combined sewage overflow, and it's when the sewage network becomes too surcharged, so the volume is too high for the network to deal with it. It causes a spill into the natural environment, or sometimes this can be combined into the surface water network and spill that way. We look at event duration monitoring because each year the water companies have to report a summary of their spill history and spill patterns, looking at volume of water spilt, which can be done by looking at the actual amount of time that a particular chamber is in spill for. When there's discharge, as I said, it can either go straight to a watercourse, like into the river, or it can go into the surface water network, so kind of runoff. And we generally just monitor this using depth data. So there are set depths that we know that a chamber will spill at. So if it goes beyond a certain level, it will then be over the capacity for that area and it will spill into the environment. So we monitor this using depth data, but sometimes we have some issues with our depth telemetry. So the measurements of it can be distorted by chamber features, like if there's benching, so the concrete that slopes down into the actual sewer channel itself, or if there's screens to prevent larger bits of debris spilling out with the sewage, then there are screens there to stop that happening. But it can mean that obviously the kind of beam that measures the depth of the water level can be skewed and it can measure the screen by accident. So we need to make sure that we know about the context of the sewer and that chamber when we are measuring it. So we need to look at the network characteristics and of the chamber itself. But the main challenge that I'm looking at is all these false spills caused by skewed data where the depth monitor is measuring something that isn't actually the water.
Is that sort of the examples you've just given, examples of like misdirected maintenance?
Yeah, so it can lead to misdirected maintenance. So lots of water companies, they have a team, the operations team, where if, for example, there is a spill occurring and it's not raining loads, they'll know that that's because there's a blockage or there's an issue. So they will go out to that site, have a look and try and fix it. So if we're getting all these false spills, then we might end up, as you say, with misdirected maintenance, and then that wastes the resources and might mean that there are real spills that are happening that aren't being visited because we're going to the wrong places.
What solutions has the Angle Sensor Project, or AS1 for short, provided to mitigate the challenges related to storm overflow monitoring?
So the AS1 is like a low-cost supplementary method of validating or verifying the depth monitored data. So we use the angular displacement, the sensor itself, as a proxy for flow. So in essence, the angle sensor dangles like into the sewer and it hangs vertically, and so at that stage when there's no flow it will have an angle of 0, and then as flow moves past it and it gets picked up in the flow, that will record the angle data. So if it's being taken a certain way, the angle of the displacement will be recorded. So So we can use that to indicate, okay, yeah, there is actually a spill here. So when you use it in conjunction with depth data, you can then benchmark what looks like real data against, discounting these false spills where there's no flow, but the monitor is saying that there's a massive increase of depth suddenly, but then, the angle sensor hasn't moved at all. So we can then use it as an indicator of discharge and flow moving through it. And the angle sensor also measures temperature, which means that, there are some chambers that are actually so shallow that if you're monitoring depth, it's not going to pick up the variation. So just placing an angle sensor in the chamber, and then it can go from measuring ambient air, so if there's no water at all in the network, it will just measure the air temperature, and then suddenly if a flow comes through and there's discharge coming through, the temperature measurement will swap to recording the water, which obviously is a very distinct temperature change. And so we can see the patterns that way as well.
Oh, really interesting. How was undertaking this project aided your career progression, and where do you hope to develop these skills further?
So I found it really useful. I had a very hands-on experience with the installation. So I was leading the team of engineers that were carrying out this pilot project. So I was there at the installation process and kind of familiarizing myself with the setup and the whole project itself. I was involved, start to end. And I was looking at the data quality and quality assurance in general. So overall, I really contextualized flow data and network behavior. I found that really useful for then taking it forward. And so as you said about my progression, I've only recently joined Atkins-Realis. I was working for a contracting company before, and I've now moved into this network modelling role. So I've kind of been bridging the gap between fieldwork and modelling, and this project really helped me kind of get an understanding of how the actual fieldwork feeds into modelling and the data analysis. I think it really improved my employability, but also just my confidence in communication and engaging with stakeholders or clients and expressing, the benefits of different projects and how something works to someone who hasn't heard of it before, isn't familiar with the processes. I feel much more confident now in explaining it in a really digestible way.
Sort of hands-on
I've had the experience doing it. I've presented the findings to clients, and it meant that I was comfortable and confident in how to present this information. And then on top of it all, I've been really lucky now to be shortlisted for the Adam Dean Award, which is obviously why I'm presenting at the conference itself. So just another thing that's, I found it really beneficial, and hoping to continue developing these skills and everything. And
well, congrats on that. To summarize this whole podcast, if your SciWem conference pass unlocks 3 takeaways that the audience could listen to, what would they be and why?
So I think a really key thing is that, simple innovation can be really effective. We don't necessarily need to have a really complex method to make changes, and we can use experimental methods, guide future decisions, and learning how to adapt methods and kind of scale up initial test runs and everything can be so beneficial to moving it forward. And following on from that, I guess the second thing is that environmental progress really depends on data integrity and transparency in monitoring. So obviously it's so important to, make informed decisions and build trust with all of the stakeholders, the community, the public in general. And I think that, that's one of the key things, is that just making sure that we have accuracy in our data is such a key thing. Third thing, benchmarking this data. So again, data integrity. I think benchmarking that data is critical so we can have confidence in our initial data. It's so important to be able to say, we can trust this data because we know that it lines up with this other data independently from, this one device is monitoring fine. However, we can add a secondary layer of validation, and we know that now with that context we can have meaningful data and really trust it. So I'd say that's my third thing. But also, I'm just really excited to listen to all the other great speakers, and I know that you're doing podcast episodes with everyone who's speaking. So definitely interested to learn more about everyone's topics.
Perfect. I'm sure they'll love listening to yours as well. And thank you so much for coming on the episode. I hope you enjoyed the conference yourself as well. Good luck.
Thank you.